something 99 of people do wrong but have no idea? Story 1. Argue. Modern media has shown us that being loud and throwing accusations around is the best way to argue. The amount of fallacies and angry vibes that I encounter when just trying to make a point is ridiculous. I see here a ton of red herring and straw man arguments as well. People not responding to actual claims being made, preferring to go off on tangents they themselves created. And then, if they don't get their way immediately, they say you are just trying to win despite never actually refuting your point or presenting a valid counterpoint. Story 2. There's a little stick next to the steering wheel that moves up and down. When you move it, it illuminates a light on the exterior of your vehicle that informs other drivers that you're about to make a turn, reducing the likelihood of a crash. Story 3. Please stop putting library books back on the shelf you took them from. It's often better to leave them neatly on a return cart, on a table, or at the front desk depending on your library. We scan books that are used without checkout to add them to our circulation statistics. It helps us prove traffic and learn which items engage the community. Flagging items as used in-house doesn't require identifying information either. It's anonymous. Story 4. I'm looking at my fellow dudes here specifically, but boy is there a thing with not thoroughly washing. I always wondered why it seemed like I could never shower as fast as other guys I knew. It felt like there was some inscrutable life hack that I was missing where one could get fully clean in 30 seconds. Upon digging, I was horrified to discover that a lot of dudes simply don't wash their legs' feet. They just let the soap run down their body and assume it's clean. The scrubbing is the mechanism that makes things clean, and the soap is just there to help the water do its job. And gents, I don't know what the hang-up is with your own butt. Just get up in there and scrub your undercarriage. That's one of the worst areas for odor and bacteria, and it's just so nasty that you'd think cleaning there is gross, but just wetting down the filth and drying off is not. Do better. When my wife and I first lived together, she also noticed that I took long showers not any longer than her. Mind, and she asked about it. I explained that a lot of guys don't clean themselves properly, and I could see a wave of realization about other men before me wash over her. She has had zero objections to my routine as a result. Story 5. Reading, and I don't mean in general, but for example, when a new law regulation is being considered, people don't tend to read the original documentation and just go by word of mouth. Same thing applies to policies, etc. Story 6. Risk assessment. Busy worrying about low probability matters while ignoring high probability ones. If everyone in the US properly assessed risk, they'd be far more scared of cars and sitting, and far less scared of things like terrorists and sharks, for example. Story 7. Merge in road construction areas. They line up single file and create a backup, instead of zipper merging like you're supposed to. Some people will even try to block you from doing it right because they are so stupid. Story 8. They are two Latin words, et with a T, meaning and cetera, meaning so on. It's et cetera, not etc. Et cetera. Et with a T. Story 9. Left-hand turns. So many people cut too soon and almost clip you while you're waiting at the red. You should go far enough into the intersection before starting your turn that you are driving straight by the time you pass my car. Driving instructor corrected me on this right away, but too many people never got the memo. Story 10. Critical thinking. Have your own thoughts about things that are happening or that you hear about. Connect ideas together, just for funsies, and compare facts with other facts. Critical thinking is when you don't simply take what you receive at face value. People seeing things that you don't aren't overthinking. They're simply thinking their own thoughts. They might be wrong, but it's good to practice anyway. Better than underthinking. Way better than taking everything at face value. Story 11. Most people don't actually know how to feel their feelings. They distract themselves with work, social media, or anything to avoid sitting with real emotions. People act like they're fine, but deep down, they're just running from the truth. Story 12. Eat. Common knowledge about nutrition seems like more misinformation than not. Eating more basic and really paying attention to how different foods affect you seems to be as helpful as most fancy diets. Story 13. Painting their homes. Stop dry rolling the wall Fs. If you have to push on the roller to get paint out of it, put some more paint on the roller. Roll all the way from top to bottom every stroke, or you'll see those random splotches in the sheen after it dries. Stop cutting around plates, take them off and roll right up to the hole. Pull your tape before the paint is cured or it'll take chunks of paint off your corners when it comes off. Story 14. Say standard time when for 8 months out of the year, they mean daylight time. Arizona and Hawaii are the only two states that don't observe daylight saving time. And for all the rest of us, we should say Pacific Daylight Time, Mountain Daylight Time, Central Daylight Time, or Eastern Daylight Time. For the 8 months, we move our clocks ahead by 1 hour. Story 15. I hate when people flush with the seat up. Apparently it spreads germs in everywhere. which is why I always hate going to public restrooms to use the bathroom queues they ain't got lids. Story 16. Putting tomatoes in the fridge. Tomatoes contain an enzyme that reacts to cold temperatures, causing the cell membranes to break down and leaving you with a piece of fruit that's mushy and mealy. Story 17. I've been a cycling enthusiast garage mechanic for over 20 years. The amount of people I see riding down the street bouncing up and down on tires that have 15 psi. If you hate your bike commute because it's so tough, try inflating your tires. There are many factors at play when it comes to the efficiency of a bicycle, but I would argue tire pressure has the biggest effect. There are different reasons to want different pressures. For example, with mountain biking, you generally want to go as low as you can without bottoming out your tire on your rim. If you're doing some amount of gravel or dirt path riding, you might want slightly less pressure. But if you're just riding on the road or sidewalk, look at your sidewall to see what the max allowable pressure is and do that. Story 18. Use soap. Soap doesn't clean much by itself. Soap breaks the surface tension of water, so water can clean. That means getting some liquid soap on your dry hands and rubbing it around before rinsing them off is doing it wrong. Get your hands wet first, then soap, then scrub, and finally, rinse. Story 19. Argue. The average person either doesn't know how to or chooses not to argue in good faith. For most people, it seems like winning an argument is defined by winning the audience or delivering the best roast. The majority of people, including me, will argue like dickheads because optics matter more than logic. Everyone has probably experienced losing an argument that they were 100 right about because the audience other party didn't actually care about the logic soundness of the argument. Story 20. People play smart wrong. The key to sounding smart is making well-flowing, coherent sentence. If you just put an outdated word or two in your sentence, it achieves the opposite of the desired effect. Story 21. Setting up their central heating and thermostat to work the way they actually want them to. Yes, I know you've turned the temperature up, but it won't come on until the time you have set it to come on. Yes, I know you've set it to be on now, but the desired temperature is below the air temperature. It won't come on either. Yes, I know your bills are massive and it's too hot. You've turned it to max and set it to run. 247. Yes, I set it how you wanted. But the thermostats on each radiator valve need to be set right for the room. That's why that one room doesn't have any heating. Story 22. They use the term immaculate conception incorrectly. It doesn't refer to Christ's conception, but rather the Virgin Mary's. Christ's conception is the virgin birth, aka the incarnation. Story 23. Pronounce Caesar. I guess it's fine if you're talking about the dressing, maybe, but it just sounds cringe. I thought half the characters in Fallout New Vegas were saying it wrong. The other half say it like most of us. Looked it up and turns out they were saying it right, or at least historically accurately. To say it correctly, you want to say something like Kaisar. Hard K, I, and Sar rhymes with car. Of course, if you do, most people won't know what you're saying. Sometimes correct isn't right. That said, if you ever find yourself back in time, face to face with a Caesar, I advise you to bend the knee and say his name correctly. He might have you crucified if you call him Caesar, or he may make you his jester, depending on his mood. And which Caesar? Story 24. Somewhere in your car, there is a dial or switch which changes the angle that your dipped headlights shine at. I can say with confidence that in the modern Fords, it's a center button in the middle of the lights dial. Yeah, go ahead and park your car in front of a wall or something so you can see where the headlights line is, and try it for yourself. Now turn that sucker down a few notches so it stops blinding me when I drive at night. Also, a fun fact, if you drive with a heavy load in the back of your car, it will angle the car a little differently to how it normally drives. Consider changing your headlight setting on those occasions. Cheers. Story 25. Hand washing. An alarming amount of people don't know how to wash their hands properly. Putting soap on dry skin and lathering it under the water does absolutely nothing. Your hands are disgusting, please don't come near me. Story 26. People say they are jealous when they mean they are envious. Envy occurs when someone else has something you want. If someone got a new boyfriend and you wish you had him, you are envious, not jealous. Jealousy is when you already have something, and fear another person will take it away. If you have a boyfriend and that girl at the bar is flirting with him, then you are jealous. Story 27. 99 of people breathe wrong. They breathe through their mouths instead of their noses, which leads to worse oxygen absorption, dry mouths, and even facial structure changes over time. Nasal breathing is way more efficient and healthier. Story 28. Probably not 99, but I always used to rinse my mouth out after brushing my teeth, as it seemed like the right thing to do. I'm a retired person and just recently learned that you're not supposed to rinse if you use toothpaste with fluoride because you wash away the fluoride. Story 29. In the US, making turns in a car. Left turns are to be squared to have a wider visibility of pedestrians, and if there are multiple lanes for the turn, follow the line. I see even professional drivers CDL cut turns and cross lane line. Story 30. Aim their mirrors correctly on their car. They should be aimed out so that you can see your blind spots. If you aim them straight back, you will not see anything in your blind spot. A good rule of thumb is that if you can see your car in your left or right mirrors, they are aimed incorrectly. Aim your mirrors out more. Story 31. Operate their vehicle's indicator. Most seem to apply it as a formality, not as a means of communicating. I see people using it on a sharp turn. I see people using it as they're taking the turn. The rule is to employ your indicator about a block away or some length of time so that drivers around you know what's going to happen beforehand. Story 32. Food storage. You cannot safely store open bottled sauces out of the fridge. Rice is not safe to leave out for a few hours. Deli meat and bagged greens have surprisingly short shelf life, I learned the hard way, and won't eat either more than 3 days after opening. Hot food can and should be refrigerated quickly. Don't leave food out to cool completely before refrigerating it. Story 33. Let me just say I am great in bed. I can sleep solid for 8 hours or more. Based on people who have car accidents after Sunday night sporting events, I bet a lot of people are running on 4 hours sleep and just going through the motions. Story 34. By wrong, I'm assuming you mean incorrectly, as we do tons of wrong stuff. I would say job interviews, majority of people approach them as they are being interviewed. I have always used it as an opportunity to interview the company, because they will be the lucky ones if I choose to work with them. And I must say it is extremely satisfying to turn down a company when they offer you the position. Story 35. Gym people always get hung up on what weight they are lifting. But most people don't realize execution of correct form is probably the most crucial thing to getting results. Not just how much you were able to move. Reason is you can move things in one exercise by incorporating muscles that are not meant to be used in that exercise to move the weight, whether you are conscious that you are doing it or not. This takes more load off of the muscle group that the exercise was designed to work out, and distributes that load between all the muscles you are unconsciously or consciously using to try and move the weight. This results in much less muscle activation in the muscle that the exercise is meant to train, meaning very little if any gains to be had. And even if you get gains, you are going to be getting it so much slower than you would be getting it had you had the right form from the start. Story 36. I've never pronounced library or February correctly, and I've come to terms with the fact that my accent and dialect will always people off when I say those two words. Was an English major in college. Story 37. People who work at rural gas stations not getting paid fat stacks. When every unemployed person in your county smokes meth, and there isn't another filling station for 20 miles, you have a phenomenal amount of leverage for higher wages, and they just sort of don't. It's almost unfathomable to me. Story 38. In the US, think a tax refund is a good thing, or think of a refund as the goal. It's not free money, it's the government returning an interest-free loan back to you. Story 39. Spelling grammar. I can't explain why I get so annoyed when I see someone type should of like, it's not just kids that do it. I've seen so many adults spell it like this too. Story 40. Drinking cold water right after eating can slow digestion. The best times to drink water are before meals and after waking up, while avoiding large amounts during meals. Story 41. Squat. A lot of people just get into the gym and start doing them without learning how to brace their core and engage the correct muscles in the correct motion, aka form. You'll blow out your back. Story 42. Landscaping. Most houses, businesses landscaped where I am in the US are planted with non-native, sometimes invasive plants. They do nothing for our pollinators, birds, and wildlife, and our pollinators are seeing a really big decrease in numbers. The real problem is habitat loss from farms and infrastructure, pesticide and drought. But people can fight back by planting native plants in their yard. Every little bit counts. Story 43. Boil eggs, I guess. Just found out everyone in my friend group just puts the eggs in cold water, puts them on the stove and leaves them for like 20 minutes, then pulls them off. Always complain about how hard and rubbery they are and say they don't like hard-boiled eggs. Them seemed surprised when I handed them a medium-boiled egg I did. Astonished at how it doesn't smell like sulfur and isn't rubbery af. Story 44. Walk. I work in a mall and get to work by subway. So many get off the escalator and stop to tie their shoelaces. Write a text. It is becoming unbearable. Story 45. Talking. I've given up with most people. They don't listen, just want to spew their own self-absorbed into your face. When you try and say something, they talk over you. On the very rare occasion I've met someone who doesn't speechless for a few moments, It's a bit like driving behind a BMW and they actually indicate to change lanes. Story 46. Most people think that losing weight involves eating less. It's actually eating less calories that causes weight loss, and thus you can actually lose weight eating more food. Story 47. Feed themselves. All this processed meat and dairy and fat and sugar salt. There's a reason obesity is so prevalent in the West, along with heart disease and cancers. Story 48. Wash their hands. It's wet hands, apply soap, scrub for 20 seconds, rinse hands. Most people seem to do soap first then wet, which washes most of the soap away. At least they attempt though. Can't tell you how many people just leave the bathroom without washing their hands. Story 49. Breathing. Most people breathe shallowly through their chest instead of deeply through their diaphragm, which reduces oxygen intake and increases stress without them even realizing it. Story 50. I learned rinsing after brushing teeth is incorrect. Learned late in life. Now I brush twice. Kinda. I rinse, tongue scrape, then start over and brush with fresh toothpaste and not rinse. Story 51. We've all done something illegal. Drive over the speed limit thinking it's no big deal. Yet we still slow down whenever we see a cop LOL. We're all secret criminals. Story 52. Playing Monopoly. People giving out money for free parking, allowing debts, etc. just prolongs the game and makes it miserable. If you actually play according to the rules, you can finish a game in like 30 minutes. Story 53. Hand washing. Most people that I observe wash for like 5 seconds and don't even use soap. The hospital that I was at recommended at least 20 seconds with soap.